All right, so why don't we get started? Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us on this webinar as we talk about the immediate benefits of migrating your SAP ECC workloads to the AWS cloud. My name is Alex Thomas. I'm the VP of Professional Services at CONTAX. And today presenting at our webinar, we have Tim Cariascio from CONTAX, who is our SAP on AWS practice lead. From AWS, we have Joey Sabili, who's the natural SAP on AWS lead. And we also have one of our long-term customers, Robert Verone from Atlas Paper Bag, we're gonna talk about his specific journey to the cloud. As far as the agenda for today, we're gonna do a quick introduction on who CONTAX is, and then we're going to dive into some of the specifics around our migration approach when we migrate ECC workloads on the AWS cloud. We're going to talk a bit about the benefits of moving your SAP workloads on AWS. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper and talk about the actual project plan and discuss our customer case study of Atlas Paper Bag. And at the end, if you have any questions, feel free to type those in the chat box. We'll be monitoring those questions throughout the course of the presentation, but at the very end, we will answer any questions that you have. And again, thank you for joining our webinar today. A little bit about us. So CONTAX, we've been in the business for almost 30 years. We are an SAP Gold partner, an actual valid added reseller of the SAP software. And we're also an AWS Advanced partner that specializes in rapid and cost-effective SAP ERP solutions for the SME market, as well as servicing the LE market. If it's designing and migrating SAP workloads to the cloud, or enhancing and supporting your existing SAP system, CONTAX is a pure, affordable player in both the SAP and AWS community. Our success has been on delivering top-notch quality of service for a reasonable price to develop long-term client relationships. A few of the key differentiators from us from some of our competitors is all of our consultants are full-time employees. We do not use subcontractors. And we work with around 100 ongoing customers on a regular basis. We service out of 8 delivery centers across the world, 3 in Canada, 3 in the US, 1 in Melbourne and 1 in Utrecht, Netherlands. This allows us to deliver a follow of the sun type model where we're able to provide 24/5 or 24/7 support. I'm going to hand it off to Tim, who's going to speak a little bit more around our migration approach.
Thanks, Alex. I'm going to go through a few of the reasons why our customers choose to migrate to AWS. There's dozens of different reasons why a company might choose to migrate their SAP system into the AWS cloud, but we've highlighted 4 that we have seen most often and are the most compelling reasons for them to move to the cloud. The first of these is to reduce cost. We've seen this quite a bit, especially now with all of the changes going on around COVID and contraction of all sorts of different business areas. We've seen this really become a key driver, is the reduction of cost, the ability to turn off instances and pay on demand for instances has been a key driver for the move to the cloud. In addition to that, the increase of agility that you have by moving into the AWS cloud allows you to innovate and innovate faster. Our customers have decided to move to the cloud to try new services and try those services quickly. as well as spin up temporary instances, use them as they need them to try things out and to test things, and then spin those instances down, terminate the instances, and stop paying for them as soon as they're done proving what it is that they decided they were going to do. Improved performance is another key driver. And we've seen not only improved performance in terms of stability and accessibility of the SAP workloads in the AWS cloud, but we've seen the ability to implement other performance fixes, such as high availability or just building fault-tolerant architecture that is possible in the AWS cloud that may have been either impossible on-premise or cost prohibitive to implement on-premise. And the last one is what we've seen as a fairly large driver very recently, which is the increase in security. Offloading the hardware security away from on-premise, no longer worrying about the hardware security and allowing AWS to handle that security and allowing AWS to protect your data and resting easily because you know that AWS is able to use their best-in-class security to protect all of your data and all of your critical infrastructure. And the last thing is that we see AWS as your first step in your SAP S/4HANA journey. This presentation, we will visit APB, Atlas Paper Bag, and we'll talk about how they migrated their SAP ECC 6 environment into the AWS cloud. But that was just the first step in their journey that will ultimately culminate in them running SAP S/4HANA in the AWS cloud by 2027. We envision that S4 journey as a three-step process for customers that are unable or don't have the appetite to make that huge shift and move directly to S4 today. We see them being able to handle this in a multi-tiered approach and a multi-step approach, going from your ECC 6 environment and migrating that into the AWS cloud. You see immediate benefits in the short term, as we discussed before, the increased cost efficiency, the elasticity, and then the retirement of your technical debt. You no longer have to worry about these on-premise or co-located servers, when they're going to become obsolete, when you're going to have to replace them or size them up. That no longer becomes a problem when you're on the AWS cloud. Once you're in the AWS cloud, many options become available to you. You're able to innovate quickly, and you're able to try out new things. And one of those new things that we see our customers trying out once they're on the AWS cloud is an upgrade to SAP Suite on HANA. We view this as an intermediate step, and it is all done in the cloud without ever having to requisition new hardware. The business, when they decide it's time to upgrade to SAP Suite on HANA, will do that right in the cloud, and the newer high compute instances that are required for SAP Suite on HANA can be launched in minutes, and that project can begin right away without any worry or any need to reformat or rehost your workloads. After that, we have the culmination of our journey, which is the upgrade to S/4HANA and beyond. Our customers know that when they migrate into AWS and they move their workloads, their SAP workloads into the cloud, they will never outgrow AWS. Anything that they will need, not just in 2027 when they upgrade or when they will have been upgraded to S4, but any future innovation, they can rest assured will be supported by AWS. And that's a really important thing. They'll never have to worry about moving their systems again. There's no requisitioning of new hardware as business needs change. They'll just continue to use AWS, and AWS will continue to support their SAP workloads. What we're going to do in this presentation is step through a typical migration project. As I'm sure all the folks on this webinar are aware, SAP migration projects are all unique. They depend on the business needs in the same way that an SAP install can drag out and take a very long time. These migrations are all contingent upon the requirements of the business. CONTAX, the quickest we've done a migration from on-premise to the AWS cloud was the entire landscape from kickoff to users transacting on the system. It took 2 weeks. We understand that that's not typical, and this is more indicative of what a typical migration looks like. We see these migrations as a 5-step process. The first step being your migration readiness assessment. This is where AWS and CONTAX work together to do a discovery and figure out what your system could potentially look like in the AWS cloud. At this point, the project team is assembled. Following that first step, we do what's called the migration readiness and planning step. We identify all the workloads that are going to be migrated into the AWS cloud, and we choose a pilot workload. And at the end of this step, the key deliverable is the project plan, and all stakeholders sign off on that project plan. Number 3 is the exciting step. This is the migration. This is the execution of our project plan. The first 2 steps, we plan the work, and in step 3, we work the plan. We design, we migrate, and test all of those workloads as they're one by one or in batches moved into the AWS cloud. The 4th step is optimization. And this is a key step because it's something that the cloud allows us to do that previously we probably wouldn't have been able to do. We can let the system normalize after the migration step and identify optimization opportunities, whether that be cost optimization, or sizing things down, using servers in different ways, application scaling. All of these things are possible now that you're in the cloud, and that optimization can be done right there. In addition, there's operational security, whether that be setting up high availability or cross-region replication, so you can fail over into a different geographical region. Things like that are all things that can be identified and done following that migration. And then the culmination of the project is the completion. The project team is disbanded And then the system is handed over to the business and whoever is managing the workloads, whether that be an MSP team, managed service provider, or if the business is managing their own workload, that can be done as well. This is the shared responsibility model that comes with AWS. Now, once your workloads are in the AWS cloud, you no longer need to worry about a lot of the things that you needed to worry about on premise. And that is your hardware, your infrastructure, your power. All of those things are handled and AWS is responsible for them. There's also a software layer that you've now abstracted out of what you need to worry about, whether that be your compute, your storage, your networking. This is all handled and maintained by AWS and provided with a very high SLA. As the customer up in blue, all you need to worry about is your application layer and your operating system, and then the data that resides on your application, SAP. And then what we have over here on the side is that a managed service provider, such as CONTAX, can also offload even more of that responsibility. So you can only focus, or you need only focus on your data and running your business, as opposed to running the hardware and running the application. You can focus on your business. All right. Well, I'm going to hand this over to Joey from AWS, and he can talk a little bit about why AWS.
Thank you very much, Tim. First off, I wanted to thank everyone for their time today. It's greatly appreciated. It's our pleasure to be here and to have this conversation with you. Whoever's controlling the slides, just click ahead, please. All right. I wanted to take the next couple of minutes to really explain the why behind SAP on AWS. And that why really starts with our rich experience. In comparison to any other cloud provider out there, we really have the most experience running SAP in the cloud. And that experience amounts to almost now a decade of working with SAP. As a result of that experience, we now have well over 5,000 SAP customers running in the cloud. Tim, if you can click the next slide. In the next few slides, I'll be able to talk a little bit more in detail about the benefits that these customers are seeing, right? And these are not customers that are running, a week, 2 months. They've been running many years on our platform. And so that benefit of being able to have that conversation with these customers and let them tell us what are the benefits that they're seeing is very valuable. And we were able to capture some of those top benefits. Tim talked a little bit about it, and I'll be able to dive a little bit more in detail shortly. This slide here talks about how SAP uses our platform, leverages the power of AWS to innovate, which is really a tremendous benefit that our platform has to offer for our customers, is the ability to innovate. And so that's what SAP is doing. They're using our platform to release products, innovative products onto the market to their customers. And so the question that you have to ask yourself is if you are using SAP, and if SAP is using AWS to run their business, why wouldn't you? If we move on to the next slide. As we mature and as we gain an experience around SAP, we started putting in place building blocks that really zoom in on specific needs as it pertains to industries. And so for most industries, we have different plays that really highlight, I would say, the complementary AWS services that are out there that enables specific companies and specific industries to perform that much better. So if you take, for instance, the manufacturing or automotive industry, when you look to migrate your SAP workloads into the cloud, well, the next step will be to understand, again, what are some of those innovative AWS services that your competitors are leveraging to help them excel and help them propel and innovate even more and get a higher return on their SAP investments. Next slide. This slide really talks about our experience. There was a Gartner report that came out a couple of weeks ago that really shows the delta, if you will, between us and our closest competitor. That delta just keeps on growing. And again, it speaks to the volume of our experience, our leadership in the marketplace. Next slide, please. Okay, so depending on your need, we do have the experience to accommodate you towards your journey into the cloud, into AWS. I would say the most common path that customers are taking today is the lift and shift. I would say that there's one main reason. One, most customers right now are looking to reduce their costs given what's going on with the pandemic. But they're also taking the lift and shift approach, which is really the easiest and fastest way to get into the cloud as a first way to digitally transform. Most ERP implementations or upgrades are time consuming. There's a lot of business process discussions that have to happen. And so instead of waiting for the actual upgrade or latest, greatest ERP version to be deployed, customers are doing a lift and shift. Immediately they're seeing gains in performance. Immediately they're on the latest and greatest technology platform from an infra standpoint. They're in a very secure environment. And they're able to get savings in terms of their operating costs. Once they have that, then they start looking to do an upgrade that may come 6 to 12 months to 2 years later. But we also see the other use case where customers today are running an ECC platform, and they're also taking the opportunity in this downturn to upgrade and migrate to the cloud. But the most common use case right now is the lift and shift. Let's move on to the next slide. Now, these building blocks or pillars that we see here highlights the advantages that our customers are seeing. Again, as I mentioned around the operating costs, what AWS has done is we've also created an investment program to help our customers migrate to the cloud. Taking that into account and the performance behind our platform, most customers are reporting a reduction in their operating costs that range between 20 and 50%. In terms of performance, and just move on to the next slide, Tim, it's going to be easier for me to highlight those top benefits. As I was talking about our large customers running SAP workloads in AWS, these are some of the benefits that they're reporting back to us, right? So we talked about the obvious one, which is the cost savings. We talked about the second obvious one, which is an improvement in performance and uptime. I talked about security, but what I wanted to touch upon is really the innovation factor, right? So in third place here, 32% of our customers are saying that once they've migrated over to AWS, one of the biggest benefits that they're seeing is an increase in innovation. So what does that mean? So customers who make investments in SAP, those investments don't tend to be small in nature. By moving to AWS, what they're able to do is that SAP data suddenly becomes compatible with almost 200 SAP AWS services that run on our platform. So they're able, with their SAP data, to leverage some of our AWS services, whether it's around ML, AI, whether it's around analytics. They're able to leverage some of those AWS services and increase their ROI, increase their return on their investment in terms of an SAP standpoint. And again, going back to those different industry building blocks that I talked about before, we're able, as we engage and as we assess and have a discussion around your current and future needs, guide you through those different paths that will optimally help your company to innovate and also reduce your operating costs and improve your performance. We can move on to the next slide. So what are some of the highlights? What are some of those points that really set us apart? So we talked about experience. We talked about the breadth and depth of our services. Again, once you're running on AWS, the customers now suddenly have the advantage of leveraging almost 200 services that run on our platform. So that's the breadth and depth. The pace of innovation, because we've been doing this the longest, because we have been dominating the market for the longest time, we're able, with the engineering behind our platform, help customers innovate. Our global footprint, we have availability zones across the whole world, availability zones that are able to allow customers to have a very high uptime and a very secure, if you will, environment. Pricing philosophy, this is very important. One would think as you move forward in time, when we look at pricing tends to increase. In our case, AWS has been very proactive, reducing costs, reducing prices. So as we scale, we're sharing our economies of scale with our customers, and we're not increasing our prices, but we're lowering our prices. So that is something that it really sets us apart. And then lastly, we're the only cloud provider out there that really requires our partners like CONTAX to be certified SAP. And that is very important. For partners to become an SAP on AWS partner, they have to go through a very rigorous program, and they have to upkeep with many different requirements and quality metrics that we as a company, AWS, require our partners to respect. And so that really allows us to build an ecosystem that is very rich and very strong, and that allows customers to, again, reach out in confidence and feel that that they're going to be able to get the service that they're expecting from their partners. And CONTAX, being an SAP partner, is able to do that. And this is a good transition to the use case that we wanted to talk about around Atlas Paper Bag. So Robert, please go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to thank Melissa and Alex and Andre to invite me to this seminar. I'd like to just kind of give you a little bit of history. You can go to the next slide, I think. Yeah, we've been using SAP since 2012. We went from an almost in-house system to migrating to SAP, and CONTAX was fundamentally such a huge help in bringing us to the next level and getting it all installed, and the training and working with us and truly understanding our needs and what we needed to do to become a good SAP user. And over the years, with as we learn more and we adapt to the new system, we become very close. So 6 years later, they approached us and say, well, we think it's a good thing to go to AWS. They've explained a little bit to me what the platform and the benefits, but honestly, having the good relationship that I had with CONTAX, I didn't question. If they told me that was the right thing to do, then I knew without question that was the right thing to do. And they laid out the schedule, when things are going to be done, and how smooth it's going to be. They told me, and they were right. Everything was done according to schedule to make sure that it didn't disrupt our daily operation, because as we all know, not having a computer system during work is detrimental to, and it's very difficult to proceed in today's world. But everything that they said is going to happen exactly on time, efficiently. And that Monday morning came along and we're on AWS, it went through flawlessly. And we didn't know what to expect. We kind of said, okay, great, here we go. And then we started noticing all the changes, where the number of drops became less. The stability of the system was so much better. Performance was better. And because of that, we spoke less because we needed them less. But the support was always there. We were always ready to make sure that we're comfortable, to make sure we're ready and we're proceeding forward. And now, as Joey was saying about, or going to the next step with Hannah, I know for sure without any hesitation that, CONTAX is going to take care of us and they're going to help us to move forward to the next level of what needs to be done. I think that's pretty much all I could say.
Thanks, Robert. I really appreciate that. Right now, I think we're going to go through, and Robert, feel free to pitch in if you have any comments. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through what your migration timeline was, right? We kept note of all the dates and key events during your migration project. And we're just going to go through them right now because we do feel that your migration was fairly indicative of a typical SAP ECC 6 migration. It was a pure lift and shift. And so we feel this is a pretty standard project. So this was done back in 2018. And we had our kickoff on February 9th. So our project team met, we discussed our goals, our deliverables, and our timeline, and we put together our project charter. As Robert said, we have a very strong working relationship with Atlas Paper Bag. So all the folks knew each other. This was a fairly casual kickoff. We all knew what we were looking to accomplish. So this was a very quick and productive meeting. We then spent the next few weeks finalizing the project plan. We took those goals and timelines and we formalized them. And we put them into a document with dates and deliverables. And we selected the first instance to move, our pilot instance. And that one was their SAP ECC 6 development instance. We decided to just move that instance and kick the tires once it was in the cloud. And that project plan was finalized on February 24th. From there, we began putting together the AWS landscape. This was all based on the blueprint that had been agreed upon. We spun up the AWS landscape. We created the virtual private cloud. We set up VPN connections, all based on AWS's best practices. And that was done on March 5th, or finished on March 5th. From there, we planned and organized, and we migrated the first SAP workload. That SAP ECC 6 development workload was migrated to the AWS cloud on March 19th. At that point, we did a bit of regression testing and we determined everything worked fine. We were very happy with what had been done, and we were able to then move on and begin migrating other workloads, QAS and other supporting workloads to their SAP landscape. And so that was done in that migration step. We picked each workload, migrated it, and then we performed a full round of user acceptance testing, and we planned our go live from there. This step took around a month in terms of moving the workloads, having the end users perform user acceptance testing, and then we scheduled that production migration weekend for the weekend of April 21st and 22nd. We had a scheduled migration window, and the CONTAX team performed the cutover from the legacy provider into the AWS cloud of the production workload. That weekend, there was data validation and smoke testing done. and the team was satisfied that the migration had gone successfully. But obviously, you never know for sure until the rubber hits the road and the end users log on to the system. So on April 23rd, the end users logged on to the system and began transacting their normal business on the SAP environment. They came into work, logged on to SAP, and began working. Many of them were unaware that the migration had even occurred. They came in and just began transacting. And that was very satisfying to the whole project team. And hypercare began as soon as the end users were transacting business. We allowed hypercare to continue through month end, which all of you SAP folks will be aware. Month end is a very critical time, and financial closing was something that we wanted to keep the entire team on to support. But following that month end, we rolled off, and the CONTAX managed services team resumed their standard operation, and the project team was no longer involved, and the project was complete. So because of this lift and shift methodology, there was no need to train end users or make any sort of adjustment to the way that the business was going to transact in the system. And that allowed the end users to basically be unaware of this migration. And that was how Robert requested it. He didn't have the time at this point to work with the end users, train them on a new system. He said, as long as the end users can come in on Monday and transact, we're good to go. And that was discussed in the kickoff, and that had been our goal the whole way. And we believe we achieved that goal.
Exactly what happened.
We're going to go over here to Robert's quote. Robert?
Migration RSP workload to SA was a breeze. We finished work on Friday on our old server and came in on Monday to a cloud-hosted system. And I'm the only person in the company that knew that. So everybody else was, so it was completely transparent to everybody else in the company. So it was really a well-done job.
Thanks, Robert. So I'm going to hand this off yet again to Alex, who started us off, to talk about the key steps in starting your journey to the AWS cloud.
Thanks, Tim. And thanks, Robert and Joey, for your participation in this webinar. You know, as far as next steps, we kind of break it down into like three kind of key stages. It's called the access, the mobilize, migrate, and modernize. What we'd like to do is set up some further meetings with you. Again, these are all complimentary, where we'd like to do a further discovery, really understand your environment, understand the potential benefit, and also do a TCO assessment. You know, from there, a lot of the customers, and similar to Atlas Paper Bag, you know, really determining what system would you like to kind of start off with. So a lot of our customers, we encourage them to do a proof of concept. This is actually a concept that even is pushed by AWS. You know, for us, we're big believers of you know, trialing us out as a service provider, but also you know, AWS as a hosting provider, a cloud provider. They kind of believe the same methodology. So once we kind of do a proof of concept, from there we can really understand, you know, what are the necessary steps, what are kind of some of the things that are we need to prepare for if we're going to do a full workload migration. And you know, as far as proof of concepts, you know, there's different ways to do this. Some of our customers will take a copy of their production environment and stand up a sandbox environment in AWS to test that out, and give the opportunity to even test out the performance. Or if you want something a little less less risky or less complex. Even doing something simple as copying your SAP backups into what we refer to as an S3 bucket, which is really just a cold storage to store your images or your backups in the AWS cloud. On top of that, AWS and CONTAX, I mean, we work together to really incentivize customers to make that move to the cloud. So there's different programs that allow some funding to help offset some of that cost. Some of that funding can come through both CONTAX and AWS. Some of that could offset the server cost and also offset some of the professional services cost. But the key message from here is we'd like to continue having this conversation and have the opportunity to kind of plan out your journey to the cloud. So if anyone has any questions right now, I don't see any questions. Either we did an amazing job explaining everything, or if you don't have any questions today, feel free to reach out to us. Like I said, we enjoy setting up these meetings and having further discussion and discovery on the benefits of SAP on AWS, but really also just understanding your environment and seeing what's necessary to make that move. So if you have any questions, again, Melissa put it in the chat box. You can send an email to info@contax.com, or you can reach out to one of us if you have our contact information. And lastly, I just want to thank everyone. If no one has any questions, I want to thank you, everyone, for attending today's session. Hopefully, this was insightful and gave you a lot of great information on SAP on AWS. So if there's no more questions, we'll give 15 minutes back in your day. We will be sending out a recording later. Again, thank you again for joining the call.